Welcome to the Explainer. Okay, here's a wild thought. What if you could fight off invisible toxins? Not with pills or medicine, but with energy. Sounds like science fiction, right? Well, today we're diving into a really fascinating and pretty unusual study that looks at exactly that. It's all about using ideas from quantum physics to see if we can help our bodies handle stress at a cellular level.
So, the big question this report tackles is pretty straightforward. How does our body actually react when it's up against a common, invisible toxin? And could a technology based on quantum entanglement really do anything to help? We're looking at an exploratory study here, so it's all about asking us to kind of shift our perspective and think about health and stress in a totally new light.
All right, so before we can even get into the solution that this study is looking at, we've got to understand the problem. And the problem, in this case, has a name: benzene. So, this report points to benzene as a major troublemaker. It's a type of industrial chemical, an aromatic hydrocarbon if you want to get technical, and you find it in stuff like industrial solvents and even gasoline. But here's the kicker: the real danger isn't benzene in its original form. Nope, it's what happens when it gets inside our bodies. In our liver and bone marrow, it morphs into these things called reactive metabolites. You can just think of them as unstable, super damaging particles that basically go on a rampage and mess up our cells.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The report breaks down benzene's attack into four main hits on our body. First, it messes with the protective barrier around our brain, causing something called neuroinflammation, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like: inflammation in the brain. Then it throws our whole stress response system out of whack, which can leave you feeling exhausted. It also directly damages DNA in our bone marrow. And if that wasn't enough, it literally drains the batteries of our cells, our mitochondria. That's why the report calls it an energetic short-circuiting agent. It just pulls the plug on our cellular energy. Okay, so you've got this chemical that attacks us on all these different fronts. What do? Well, this is where the study looks at a, let's just say, very unconventional solution. It comes from a company called Lila Quantum Tech. So let's take a look at what their product is supposed to be all about.
The whole idea behind their quantum upgrade product rests on a really mind-bending concept from physics: quantum entanglement. The report describes it as a kind of deep, energetic connection. So picture this: you have two separate objects that become linked. After that, whatever happens to one instantly affects the other, even if they're miles and miles apart. It's like they're sharing information across any distance in real time.
Now, I know that sounds pretty abstract, right? So to make it a little more down to earth, the report uses an analogy: the incredible bond between a mother and her child. You know, that feeling of connection no matter the distance? They use that to paint a picture of this non-local connection, what they call an energy-informational bridge.
And that brings us to the core claim here. The idea is that this technology can entangle a person with a central source of this quantum energy. And the goal? According to the report, it's all about creating a kind of harmonizing effect to help balance out the body's energy and give it the support it needs to fight back against the stress from a toxin like benzene.
But, okay, let's be real. How on earth do you even begin to measure something like that? I mean, it's not like you can use a thermometer. The researchers in this study turned to a system called BESA. It stands for Bioenergy-Informational Systems Analysis, and their goal was to try and put some numbers on these energetic changes. The best way to think about BESA is like a really unique kind of ruler. The report makes it clear it's not measuring physical stuff like your temperature or your blood pressure. Instead, it's designed to look at the body's informational and energetic regulation. So basically, it's trying to gauge how well all your different internal systems are talking to each other and keeping everything in balance. And this system sorts the body's energetic state into a few different zones. So you've got a degenerative state on one end. That's when you're low on energy. Right in the middle, you have the sweet spot, the optimal state, where everything's running smoothly. And then on the other end, there's an inflammatory state, which they describe as an energy surplus, almost like the body is overreacting to something that's irritating. Okay, so we've got the bad guy, the toxin. We've got the potential hero, the quantum solution. And we've got the scorecard, the measurement tool. So now, let's see how the researchers actually put all these pieces together for the experiment. Now, they used a double-blind setup, which is absolutely crucial in any serious study. It's the gold standard, really. It's designed to get rid of any placebo effect or bias from people's expectations. Basically, it helps make sure the results you get are as clean and neutral as they can possibly be. The whole procedure was a three-step process. First, they got a starting point for everyone by measuring their baseline energetic state with the BESA system. Step 2 is where things get really interesting and, unconventional.
They exposed the subjects to what the report calls a digital form of benzene to act as the stressor. Now, to be clear, this isn't the actual chemical. It's more like its energetic or informational signature. Then, for the final step, they ran another BESA test after the subjects had been using the quantum upgrade for at least a couple of days.
So, we come to the big question. After all that, what did this exploratory study actually find? What did the data show?
Well, according to the report's authors, the results from the BESA test were pretty clear. They suggest that the technologies seem to have a stabilizing and harmonizing effect. So after being hit with that benzene stressor, the subjects who got the quantum upgrade showed energetic readings that started to shift back towards that balanced optimal zone.
Now, the report is really careful not to claim it has all the answers. Not at all. Instead, it wraps up by leaving us with this really powerful question. It frames this whole study as just the first step in a much deeper investigation. And it asks us to think about this. Is all this talk about invisible connections and quantum entanglement just a cool theory? Or could it actually be a new, measurable frontier for understanding how our bodies regulate themselves, find harmony, and maybe, just maybe, even heal?